Back then, I thought the internet was the only revolution I would ever have to protect against in my lifetime. I was wrong. Companies who ignore the threats and opportunities of artificial intelligence will share the same fate as companies who ignored the internet.
Hello and welcome to this WithSecure webinar. My name is Janne Kauhanen and I've dressed up for our illustrious guests, Tomi Tuominen, the Vice President of Security at Wolt, and Mikko Hyppönen, the Chief Research Officer at WithSecure. We're going to be talking about the AI and what it means for the security of companies. And I guess my first question to you gentlemen would be, why is this all happening right now?
Yeah, it seems surprising that after decades of waiting for machine learning or artificial intelligence to become a real thing, it suddenly happened. I mean, over the last 12 months, we've seen more than ever before. And I think it's a combination of three different technological revolutions happening roughly at the same time. It starts from the internet revolution. Over the last 30 years, all the information we have turned into data. Internet caused this to happen. Before internet revolution, information was on paper. Today, of course, you can buy a book in paper form, but the same information is available digitally, which means we can use it for machine learning. Second revolution, the cloud. The fact that we now have the storage capability to keep these massively large amounts of information available, again, making them available for machine learning systems or building generative AI. And then the third and the most important revolution, which is explosive growth in computing capability. It's just insane how fast the fastest CPUs and GPUs are. It's pure magic what they're doing in these chip fabs and chip factories today. We can actually run these generative AI systems which keep on churning through massive amounts of data and are able to learn from them. Partially, this is enabled by new innovations in machine learning. Maybe most importantly, they transform a paper by Google Research published 6 years ago, which really started like supercharging these three revolutions. And now we are in a situation where you can give a machine, for example, all the books written in Finnish language, and you don't have to teach it Finnish. It just reads it all and learns the language, just sort of like humans do.
Okay. Anything to add to that?
Like Mikko mentioned, I mean, we're basically built on top of existing research that has been happening in the shadows for more than 15 years. And I specifically like to mention the computing power, because now just like a few days ago, iOS 17 came out on Apple devices, meaning the latest iOS operating or the iPhone operating system. And now you can run those models locally on your phone. And that was previously not just possible. And we have seen AI in multiple areas already. Like nowadays, when you're snapping a photo on in your phone, there is a lot of AI happening on the background. And those kind of things, like originally they were just niche things, but later on people learned that actually a breakthrough in one of the AI research areas, you can directly utilize that on other areas of AI, like large language models and image processing. They eventually turned out to be more or less the same thing.
And this technological and computation revolution is really in the hands of few leading companies, which have very little competition because they are so far ahead from everyone else. I'm speaking about companies like ASML, building the technology used by companies like TSMC, which is then ending up on chips used on GPUs made by NVIDIA, which end up in computing centers like Microsoft's Azure, where OpenAI and Anthropic and other companies are able to use this massive computing power. And my favorite detail about just how hard it is to build these cutting-edge GPUs, which do all this calculation, enabling these magical things, is that iPhone 15 runs on 3 nanometer technology. 3 nanometer means that the images of the chips that are burned on silicon are so detailed that the distance between two lines in the drawings is 3 nanometers. A human hair is 100,000 nanometers. The wavelength of light is 193 nanometers. Light doesn't go through those drawings, yet we use light to burn them on silicon. And this, again, is so hard to do that it's the hardest thing to do in the world. Creating these chips it's so hard. There's only one company in the world which can do it.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. The size of the transistors is measured in the number of atoms that they contain. Like, ridiculous.
Yeah. And so these revolutions happening right now is the reason why AI explosion is happening right now.
So, okay, so it is a real thing. It's not just a flash in the pan. It's not a fad. It's not going to pass in a couple of years. It's here to stay, and it is a game changer.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. The latest book I wrote, which came out 2 years ago, I wrote about how the internet revolution is the biggest thing happening during our lifetime. And when I wrote that, that's what it looked like.
Yep.
Like historically large technological revolution, which changed everything around the world. Well, I think the AI revolution is bigger than the internet revolution. And that is saying something.
Yeah. So how fast are things moving? Like, the AI revolution happened like overnight. First there was nothing, and then everything was AI. And the natural question is this going to affect the attacks we're seeing? So do you think the attackers are going to be equally quick in adapting these technologies? Is that going to change the threat landscape?
I think one of the most important things to realize is that although the attacks themselves might be empowered or might be enhanced with AI, the same rules apply on the defensive side as well. There are plenty of things. First of all, like if we look at, let's say, product security in general, like the modern development pipeline, like how do you deploy software and so on, you can use AI to enhance that, like less programming errors. You can do a lot of checks, like statistic checks or static analysis or dynamic analysis that is empowered or is using AI. And that in turn means that there is going to be less vulnerabilities to begin with. And you can utilize those techniques very, very effectively because, I mean, there are deterministic problems, which means that AI should be pretty good at solving those.
Right.
But not only that, like I've seen so many doomsday scenarios describing like how you're going to use AI to build extremely convincing phishing messages or how you're going to lure people into doing X, Y, Z things. But what most people don't seem to realize is that many of these things, we already now have technological solutions for those problems. A good example of that would be passkeys technology, which basically you can use your phone as a strong identity to tell the computer or the other party who you are. And there is no AI in the world that can take that strong identity away, meaning that basically as soon as we have deployed passkeys into wider ecosystem, like, Google is already now supporting it, Microsoft is already supporting it, Apple is supporting it, and so on. That strong identity will basically kill credential phishing completely. Because I can give you my username and password, and you as an attacker, there is no way how you can abuse that.
But how quickly is that going to end up like in the sort of end of the line solutions? Like I literally had to sign for a package yesterday, like with my finger on a tablet, like a signature.
Yeah, it's going to take a while. And these attackers using new technologies are using them for different purposes. We can't just speak about AI-enabled attacks. We have to go a little bit deeper because we will have malware attacks using AI technologies. We will have malware written by large language models. In fact, we've already seen that. It's not a real-world problem yet, but it will be. We will see full automation of malware campaigns where all the reactions done by the attackers are done at machine speed. That's a different problem. We will see large-scale automated phishing and spam campaigns. We will see business email compromise attacks, which spend extended amount of time convincing individuals in organizations that they should be doing something they shouldn't be doing. On the consumer side, all the scams will be automated, like romance scams and auction scams, Airbnb scams. And then, of course, we have the deepfake problem as a general problem, like having politicians saying something they're not really saying. So different kinds of problems, and all of these are enabled by these new technologies, but we sort of have existing solutions for all of them, and it always is AI against AI. Like, how do we detect malware which is rewriting its code? Well, we detect it with AI-enabled detection algorithms that detect anomalies or detect bad behavior or weird things done by code. How do we detect deepfakes? Well, with AIs that are trained to detect deepfakes. How do we stop BEC attacks that are using internal email access to throw in emails which aren't real? Again, the same solutions. Now, we really do have to think about things that would make this easier. For example, I do think that tools which are capable of creating convincing content, whether it's text or sound like voice, speech, or images or video, we should have some kind of fingerprinting mechanisms built in to make it easier for humans and machines to tell fake content from real content. And there's been some ideas floated around this. I've had discussions with OpenAI about this myself, but we aren't seeing that yet, and we really should be thinking about that. That's going to work as long as these systems are closed source. Open source systems, of course, are a different story.
And it might not be fake content. There is a difference there. Fake content typically refers to fake news, but it can be generated content, which is a bit different because, I mean, I can use it to generate avatars of myself or something, and it doesn't mean it's fake. It's just auto-generated. That might look very, very real.
Yeah, and that's actually on the definition side of things. I think it's important to keep in mind where the term generative AI comes from, because all these massively world-changing technologies that we've seen over the last year, like ChatGPT or Stable Diffusion or DALL-E or Midjourney or music generators, all they are generative AI. And it really just means that you have a system which has seen a lot of content, a lot of text, a lot of images, a lot of sound, a lot of voice, and then it can generate. Generative AI, it generates content like that. And you can also turn it the other way around. It can not only generate, it can recognize. If it can generate images like human faces, it can also detect or recognize human faces. That's where the whole term generative comes from.
Well, the good thing about attacks and threats that are targeting humans is that those still have to happen at the speed of humans. But you were talking earlier about sort of AI attacks and AI defenses, and I'm thinking of the stock market where already the trades are happening between computer systems, and sometimes there happens weird things and you just have to go back to the logs and see what the heck just happened. Is that what the sort of technical defense and attack landscape is going to look like?
I mean, if we look at the history of attacks or like threat actors in general, the speed has always only increased. Like there is this old saying by NSA that the attacks never get worse, they only get better. And yeah, most probably we're going to see some, like already now we're seeing heavily automated things. But I think there is going to be a limit to that as well. I think we're already at a point that the speed might not increase, but the scale will.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it applies to all of these attacks. Especially, it's important to realize that language barriers no longer stop the attackers. A month ago at Black Hat in Las Vegas, there was a great research published by Harvard researchers on using current large language models to detect malicious emails, typically phishing emails. And it was especially remarkable how they were able to do this in all languages. So it doesn't matter if it's a phishing email in German or French or Finnish or English. Barriers are going down. Now, the same technology can be used to generate these phishing emails as well. But again, like I mentioned earlier, the solutions are the same as the problems. If you can generate the problems with AI, you can also detect the problems with AI. And this research was a prime example of that. When I was having one meeting with OpenAI researchers, they actually mentioned that they've had really worried contacts coming in from Switzerland, where a big part of the world's banking happens. It turns out in Switzerland you have these tiny cantons, small language areas, where they not only speak a specific dialect, but even write it. Even the written text is very specific for a specific area. And they've always thought that they are sort of protected against scams and phishing emails because the language area is so small. Well, turns out GPT can speak all of those small dialects very convincingly. And that's scaring these bankers in Switzerland.
I'm sure. Okay, so moving on a little bit, you made that great quote about companies who sort of shun the AI revolution are going to do as well as companies who ignored the internet when it was starting. Is that what we think is going to happen? That the companies who are not sort of ready for the AI stuff now, who are biding their time, who are seeing how this plays out, they're going to be left behind?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is something we do have to take seriously. Many of the people watching will remember 30 years ago when internet came around and not everybody took it very seriously or thought it was some kind of a fad and they were really left behind. The companies which embraced the change when we went from local systems to global systems, where suddenly you could reach customers and clients and partners everywhere on the planet. They reaped the benefit for years being like fast movers and believing that this revolution is going to happen. The revolution was real. And the revolution brought us the internet revolution 30 years ago brought us huge upsides and huge downsides. But the upsides were much, much bigger than the downsides. And that's exactly what's going to happen here with the AI revolution. It is a real thing. I believe it's a bigger revolution than internet was. And it's going to bring us huge upsides and huge downsides. But again, I do believe the upsides are bigger than the downsides.
Why do you think it's going to be bigger?
The upsides?
No, the
revolution.
Yeah.
Because this changes everything. I mean, we really needed the internet revolution as a stepping stone to be able to get to this level. And the more powerful these systems are, the more versatile they are. We can use them for systems and services that we can't even imagine yet. There's a great clip on the internet where Mark Andreessen, the creator or the main designer behind Netscape, the first mainstream web browser, is being interviewed on morning television in USA. They've just released the first beta of Netscape. 99% of the audience has no idea what the internet is, and the host is asking Netscape creator, like what is the internet? What is this web browser? What can you use it for? And he can't give a concrete answer. His answer is that, well, you can use it for anything. Like what? Well, for anything. So what can you have on the internet? You can have anything on the internet. Like what? Well, things, stuff. Like there's not a single concrete thing he would be able to like tell the audience that, you could have like newspapers online or weather report or videos. He's not able to like think that far. He's just saying that, it's going to be enabling things. And of course, everybody who saw that interview probably walked away thinking that, what the hell, what is this thing? There's nothing concrete here. And that's sort of where we are today. We know this is big. It's going to enable a lot of things. You can do anything, but we probably don't really understand all the things we are able to build when we have so powerful new technologies helping us building those new things.
What makes this especially hard to imagine is that, like previously mentioned, these types of AIs, like if you do a breakthrough on one of the areas, like image processing or voice processing or text processing, basically all those learnings will make all the other like areas stronger and faster and better, which means that we have really hard time imagining what is the combination or the like end result. Like if this gets better, this gets better, this gets better, and suddenly we are in a situation that we can do absolutely amazing things. Like one of my favorite things that I read about recently was that AI has helped us, for the first time in the history, has helped us to identify Parkinson's disease in an early stages just by analyzing your eye. And that is absolutely huge.
Yeah.
And I think that this is just like one example, like how it's going to revolutionize our healthcare, how it's going to revolutionize our diagnosis, like just a simple thing like a blood test. I mean, what if you just have huge amount of markers and then based on those markers, you can use something completely new? Like, and those are just few examples.
Yeah, so we could do Theranos for real.
Exactly.
Yeah. That would be, I mean,
Yeah.
things like these are becoming, they're getting closer and closer to reality. Like we have more computing capability with completely different way of analyzing the data thanks to these generative AI algorithms. And it's going to affect every business area.
And if we go back to the scaling thing, like imagine that you can use your phone, you just record a video of yourself and then your phone will tell you that, dude, you have a Parkinson's disease. That scales way better than the amount of doctors that we have at the moment.
Sure. Okay, so let's say we've convinced everyone that this is happening and they need to start moving right now. So, what are the things that companies should be doing around the AI space right now? Just sort of, a lot of companies are sort of dangling their feet in the water a little bit, like experimenting with ChatGPT or things like that. So, what are the tangible things that companies should be doing today so that they don't get left behind?
Well, that really depends on what the company is doing. Of course, all possible business areas are affected by this change, but it's hard to really give advice which applies to every single company and every single business area. So it really starts from the fact that taking this seriously and dedicating time to understand and learn how these technologies work, and then brainstorming with your own people, like what is this going to mean for us? How is this going to change our business? If you work in medicine, or if you work in building cars, or if you are running a hotel, it's going to affect every single part of your business. For years, we've been speaking about how every company is a software company, and that is absolutely true. If you're running a hotel, you're running it on software. If you're building cars, cars are data centers on 4 wheels. Medicine, again, same thing. So this is going to be a similar revolution that the software revolution was, but it's going to be enabling much, much more processing of data and understanding that data and helping you to use the data. So what companies should be doing is visioning the future where we have much more computing capability which will be able to answer our questions. How should we be building our systems so we can use these new helpers to run our businesses better?
But given what you're saying that this is going to change everything, doesn't that mean that companies sort of have to examine all the assumptions that they've ever made about their business? Like, these are the laws that we operate under, and these are the sort of unmutable things that we can't change. These are the problems that we just have to learn to live with. Now is the time to re-examine all of those and see if this changes anything.
It might not be obvious. Like, one of my favorite things has been that, like, Boeing, the CEO of Boeing was asked, like, what is your competitive advantage? And the guy answered that the aerodynamics of our wings, which might not be obvious answer. Like, that's not maybe like, maybe you would think like, we make some pretty good airplanes or something, but that was his answer. And it actually says that on their website. Now, Google did a cooperation, maybe it was American Airlines or United, I don't remember which airline it was, but they started optimizing the routes of their fleets. And just by running that through an AI simulation, they were able to get 20% gain on the efficiency as well as lowering the cost of everything without sacrificing the service level. 20% is huge.
Sure.
So maybe the path where I'm going with this is that maybe you should take a critical look, like take those 2 steps behind, look at what your company is doing, take the most complex business problem and see if now AI would be capable of solving that for you. But for example, the route planning on airplanes, like or carriers in general, that's a hard problem. It's super complex, and the reason why it's complex is that you have so many parameters that it's like humanly impossible to calculate all of those, which in turn AI is pretty good at. So that might be one thing. Maybe to turn it the other way around, like What I'm a little bit afraid of is that people are going to look at things like ChatGPT and they're thinking like, okay, chatbots, so we're going to get better chatbots. And people go like, oh, Google has been using this for their search technology for a long time. And those are the first things that come to mind. But I think that the real power is elsewhere. Like we have still hard time imagining what it will really mean. And I have a feeling that this is the biggest redistribution of market share that we have ever seen in the history.
Wow.
One company I've worked with is building AI-enabled automatic sales. So figuring out where sales opportunities are and then actually building opener emails or contacting the clients and setting up meetings for sales purposes. And there's tons of things that can be done there which aren't obvious, like the fact that when you have access to large databases, it can like eat all the data and understand opportunities where humans would never be able to understand the opportunities, and humans would never be able to like digest all the data. So for example, selling real estate, just looking at all the public records and looking at all the recruitment ads for companies and their press releases and their revenues and public financial figures, you can see that, this company is growing so fast, they won't be able to fit into that office much longer. And there's an office nearby, which would be the right choice. Automation will figure that out like that. And you can immediately turn that into a language, any language humans speak, and craft an opener email. My favorite example of this company is that the way they've built this sales automation, the way it finds new clients for the sales automation is that it tracks for recruitment ads for salespeople, and it answers those recruitment ads by themselves. Hi, I'm applying for this position. I'm an AI, by the way, but here's what I can do, and it works. So it's a little bit thinking out of the box,
Right.
but this is real. This is happening right now. This is not theoretical. They've been doing this for quite a while already.
So if now is the time to sort of think outside the box and take a critical look at everything you thought to be true and stuff like that, what are some of the things that we don't want companies to be doing right now? What are some of the mistakes that they should avoid in a time like this?
Well, I kind of answered already that one. Like, don't look at the things that are easy to solve, like customer support, or maybe you can look at those as well, but those are maybe the obvious
Don't
ones.
limit
So, like,
yourself to that.
exactly, like don't limit yourself to that. I think that having a critical look at your operations or what you think that you're good at, and then saying like, okay, are there some key areas that are extremely expensive to do at the moment? Can we speed those up somehow, or can we scale that better, or solving complex problems? That would be my
answer would be that don't expect quick and easy wins. That you won't be able to decrease your headcount by 50% next month just by automating everything. This is a long revolution. Again, sort of like internet revolution. Clearly, the upsides were massive, but it wasn't an overnight success. It took a while for us to understand how to work and do business in this new environment. So yes, you will be able to automate big part of your operations, and long term, that's going to make people more productive. The same people will be able to do better work and more results with the automation helping them to be better in their work. But it's not going to be happening overnight. And the example of tech support is actually pretty good. I mean, these narrow, specific expert systems are able to provide better tech support for end users than humans can. They know all the details. They remember every case. They can interact with humans just like humans can. But of course, we humans would like to know when we are speaking with a human and when we are speaking or chatting with a machine. And that's one of the things we have to consider here. And it's also one of the things the EU AI Act is raising, that when we humans interact with machines, we should be told that even though it looks like you're speaking to a human, it's not a human.
Yeah, the Turing test is rapidly losing relevance.
that is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we're security professionals. So let's talk about protecting ourselves in this ever-changing world. So the AI is happening. It's a tool for defenders. It's a threat as well. On the defensive side, what are some of the things that we should be doing right now?
I'll start with my favorite anecdote about the history of artificial intelligence within WithSecure. Company was founded by Risto Siilasmaa in 1988. Before Risto founded this company, he had actually written his first articles about artificial intelligence. If you go and read magazines from like 1987, you'll find Risto as a 21-year-old student writing articles about artificial intelligence. He's been one of the brains inside the company pushing us towards more automation, more machine learning, and more artificial intelligence. That's why we started our first malware detection machine learning engines in 2005, 18 years ago. We've been working in this space longer than any other security company. And all that time, we've sort of been waiting the thing that's happening right now to happen. And that means that barriers are coming down. The accessibility of these tools, for good and bad, are coming down. And now we're sort of waiting that all these things we've been building for defense, how well do they really wage against attacks which are using these same tools? Because we really haven't seen them until now. We now have the very first examples, and we do believe good AI will beat bad AI. But we will really only see it when we, for example, start seeing full-scale, completely automated malware campaigns, which will happen in the near future, but hasn't happened yet. And why we know they haven't happened yet is simply that they are still too slow. We can see that attackers are working at human speed, reacting to our automated defenses, in hours or in days, which means it's not a machine, it's a human. That's going to go down to seconds. And then we know that it's automated on both sides, and then we'll see who will win. I believe it's the good guys, but we don't really know.
I actually think I'm quite positive about this because, like already previously mentioned, I think that the AI will revolutionize the quality of software. Like already now, the productivity is increasing like crazy. Like if you have tried GitHub Copilot or any of those services, they are absolutely amazing. Like already by now, and we are barely scratching the surface at the moment. Like they will only get better, which means that the quality of software will increase significantly. We're going to get more languages that are actually secure. Like if you look at languages, programming languages like Rust at the moment, they are already now amazing, but they will only get better. And we can ask an AI to create a safe language that basically we can kind of guarantee that the software that we produce with that is going to be free of traditional security vulnerabilities. And obviously it's going to be an instant, but gradually, like if we look back, all the biggest wins have been because of tooling. You were able to make the tooling better, that scaled well, and that's the reason why we have more secure software nowadays than, like, for example, 20 years ago. And also another thing meaning that this will also make it very, very hard to find vulnerabilities. Also, like offensive techniques like fuzzing, for example, which means that you're basically using computers to find different paths to different unwanted functionalities, so to say. Fuzzing, like AI, lends itself extremely well to fuzzing, which means that even the vulnerabilities that will exist, the good AI will find them most probably earlier because companies like Google are already now offering it for the most critical parts of internet, or the services that power the most critical part of internet. And lastly, like we should not think that it's always AI against AI. This is a little bit more asymmetric problem or issue. Like many of the attacks will be traditional ones, and the AI will be able to defend against those attacks, and vice versa. Like many of the attacks that will be AI powered, the cure or the defensive posture against that or the mitigation will be something a little bit more traditional, like passkeys that I mentioned earlier.
And companies will mostly rely on cybersecurity companies doing this work for them. But they should also realize that if you're defending your own network, if you're a large enterprise and you're, for example, looking at denial of service attacks coming your way, or spam or phishing campaigns, and you're actively blocking attacks yourself, be ready. Those are going to change very quickly. If you block something in the near future, the reaction time from the attackers is going to be in seconds or minutes, and they have automatically detected that they are being blocked, and it's going to be rerouted and attacked from somewhere else. So completely automated reactions from the attackers to your defenses.
Yeah.
That's going to happen. All of these will be enabled by these automation systems.
So you mentioned cybersecurity companies. I wanted to talk about that a little bit. The AI revolution seemed to catch everybody off guard a little bit. What about this industry? Did it catch us off guard? Are companies, security companies, were they AI ready?
Security companies were forced to use massively large machine learning systems years ago because there was no other way to keep up with the amount of attacks. So we couldn't continue in the old world, even if we wanted to. We would need an army of 1 million analysts to be able to keep up with the amount of malware samples and malicious network flows and look at different exploits if we wanted to analyze everything by human brain power. So it had to be automated, and that sort of forced the industry into this world where everything is being run by different large-scale frameworks, starting from fairly simple machine learning systems, but now grown into these AI frameworks that are being used by security companies. Again, we've been doing this for a very long time, so we've been seeing how the industry slowly but gradually moved from the old world into the new world. But cybersecurity industry was one of the first industries to embrace AI. Maybe not because we wanted to, we had to.
Okay. So how ready are we? Like, are the products that we have today, the services that we have today, are they good enough for this world? I mean, presumably there has to be a lot of research and design and just rethinking of services and products.
Right now, we are putting a lot of effort and investment into R&D to be able to keep up and to forecast what's going to happen next. Things are moving very fast. It's very hard to give promises that we will be able to defend against every possible attack when the tools that attackers now have access to are downloadable or can easily be taken into use. For example, the open sourced large language frameworks, most importantly Llama out of Meta, is worrying me because now anybody can just remove restrictions and use it to have it to write malicious code or draft malicious emails. And none of the restrictions originally built into these frameworks apply anymore because it can just be downloaded. When we are using closed-sourced environments, like for example GPT, that's a client-server architecture. OpenAI can always block actors who use their services for badness. And then it becomes sort of like a game of cat and mouse. And this account is blocked because it was using our services to write malware, and they create a new account. But you can sort of keep up with that. But it's a completely different story if you can actually download the whole framework and run it on your own systems and do exactly what you want with it. Now, arguably the most powerful frontier models, like Claude from Anthropic, or Bard from Google, or GPT from OpenAI, they're all closed source. You can only access them from their cloud. You can't download them. But Llama is not very far away, and it's a little bit worrying about what's going to come out of that, and if we're going to see more fully open sourced frontier models. I've always been a fan of open source, but here, it is a bit worrying when you give these really powerful tools in the hands of actors who can do whatever they want with it.
Yeah, and I guess to sort of an industry and a crowd of people who are not quite sure what's going to happen next and where we're going. So the discoveries might happen anywhere, on the good side or on the bad side.
Sure. And the more powerful these systems become, the more we have to worry about where the innovation is happening. It might not be happening in responsible, democratic Western nations, but somewhere else.
Okay. So can you give me some sort of like tangible, practical examples of how you think the industry has to change to sort of better meet the needs of our clients? I would assume, for example, that we're going to need more dialogue with our clients. Like, what are the sort of issues and problems that companies are facing, and how can we as a security industry meet those needs?
I think it starts from even earlier. This new industry of these artificial intelligence startups, like OpenAI, which is 8 years old, or Anthropic, which is 2 years old, they're sort of outsiders to the cybersecurity industry. There's very little like existing connections and shared research and trust And that we need to work very heavily to build that. We need to have these companies join us in the industry forums, have discussions, share intelligence, work together to make sure that the engines that can be used for good and bad are built as securely and safely as possible. There's tons of existing knowledge that the cybersecurity industry has built over the decades, and we really should be putting more effort into sharing that with these new companies, building these technologies that everybody's using around the world. Once that's solved, and that of course can be solved and will be solved, then we can go into discussion more about how the industry can work together to make sure these tools can be, how can we, for example, build systems where the fingerprinting problem is solved. So we would be able to detect that this phishing email was generated by a large language model, and we know because there's some kind of a marker which has been built into the content, or this video isn't real. This is coming from a machine. It pretends to be real, but it isn't. These are hard problems to solve, but they're not going to solve themselves.
Right. So we're going to have some time for questions and answers in a minute. We have been getting some questions already, but please keep sending them in. But before we go there, sort of, I'd like you to sort of summarize your feelings on AI. Sort of, if there's one thing that you want everybody in the audience to sort of pick up from this and start doing immediately or stop doing, what would that be? What's the most important thing right now?
I don't know. Don't be afraid. Embrace it. This is a good thing. I've seen quite a few predictions that, oh my God, we're all doomed. And I don't believe in that. I believe that eventually good things will happen.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm more of an optimist than pessimist, but of course we do have to take seriously the downsides here as well. And the downsides potentially are bigger than ever before. But then again, the upsides are bigger than ever before. And I really would like to encourage people to like hands-on work with these systems, try these systems, use them. I use them myself all the time. Like concrete practical examples of things which I think would be powerful for anybody is that, let's say you get a new industry white paper or some PDF file with a lot of content and you don't have time to read it, or you even get a book and you want to get summary of the book. Well, you can copy paste the content into Claude or into GPT. GPT has a limit. You can't copy a whole book, but there's actually an add-on called Book GPT, which allows you to paste a whole book into GPT. Then you can ask questions like, is there anywhere in this book any discussion about this topic? What did they say about it? What's written in the book about the politics of Soviet Union in 1945? And it will tell you, and it will this is on these pages, and you can double check that it's actually real. And the idea of having someone next to you, sparring with you and opening up new ideas for you is really powerful. I use these technologies all the time myself. And people are worried and disappointed when they get mistakes and wrong answers from large language models. Well, this is brand new technology. Imagine how good it will be in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. They will no longer make mistakes. And we will see really powerful teachers come out of this technology. You take a narrow area, some specific industry machine. You build an expert system which knows everything about the usage of that machine. And that system will be able to teach anyone to use that machine. Or you can imagine a child trying to learn how to do integral math. A tireless teacher which never gets mad. A large language model which knows everything about the topic, which will never make mistakes or never hallucinate about that topic because it's the only topic it knows about. They will be able to teach us to be much better as humans and like empower us to do things we wouldn't be able to do otherwise. So yeah, I'm excited about this.
Absolutely. Now, for some of the questions that we have, I'm very excited about this your predictions about how the AI is going to change the world around us, and it seems our audience is as well, and they want even more. So we have a question specifically about that. Can you expand on that a little bit? Like just one more example about something in the sort of the traditional economy, something in our real world around us that's going to be changed by the AI.
I'll start, which is because it's also a good example on the problems that comes out of this. Image generation. Like we've all seen images created by AI, of course. There's nothing new in that. We've seen deepfake videos. But then you end up with the problem of copyright. Let me just show for camera. Like I was creating some images of myself yesterday. So these photos are not done by Midjourney 5.1, and they have no copyright. They are licensed under Creative Commons 4. If you run the commercial version of Midjourney, I own these files and they have no copyright in the traditional sense. However, to create these images, I uploaded a set of my images to Midjourney, and then it generated these. And those images did have a copyright. They were taken by photographers. Now, I used photos I actually had the rights for. I had bought the rights. But you can see the problem I'm getting into.
Yeah.
I have these images, which are perfectly useful, which are not taken by a photographer, where I have the rights now. They're free. Or I own the files, but I don't actually have a copyright. They are sort of like public domain. That's great, and that's awful at the same time, because these copyright issues are very real. And you could say exactly the same thing about the copyright of any other kind of content, like text. So we are getting great benefits and completely new headaches.
Yeah. So, you were talking about software earlier and how AI is going to change that. How do you think software freedom will affect AI security?
What's the definition of software freedom?
That's a good question. I guess it is the idea that we're going to have all this. It's going to be easier for people to create software and have access to different kinds of software.
Absolutely. So I actually had a really, really good discussion with a good friend of mine who's a product person. Like he's really good at productizing things, but he never learned how to code. And now, with the help of these generative models, he had an idea, and like half an hour later, he had his first prototype available.
Yeah.
So it's going to make it more available to people who previously thought that it would be too difficult to, or just didn't want to put the time investment in. Like I strongly believe that anybody can learn to code, but it's about putting in the hours. So in that regard, but I'm not sure that's the answer to that question. Like, I don't know how you would define software freedom. Maybe if you mean it like that, yeah, it will definitely make it more democratic.
Sure.
Or linking back to my example of these images, what's the copyright of the code created by machines which learned the code by reading other code, which might be under copyright? So, yeah, interesting.
Okay, so what sort of professional skills are we in the security industry going to need with the all this AI research that's taking place, all this development? Are we going to need more sort of AI professionals? What are the skills that we're looking for right now as an industry?
I don't know if it's a skill, but I would firstly begin by understanding how these large language models work. There's a great article on Financial Times, unfortunately behind the paywall, but that it explains it extremely well, like how the large language models are built, like how many tokens they support, and how do you construct a sentence, for example. And the basic idea is pretty much the same for everything that is generative. And once you understand that, you realize that this thing called prompt engineering actually becomes a thing, because in order to come up with good prompts, you kind of need to understand how the engine under the hood works. And that is a skill set of its own. Like it will take some practice and understanding in order to be good at it. And like I've been following a lot about these Midjourney forums where people come up with things, and I was like, man, this is like, I would have never thought of that. And I actually think that writers and the people who are good with language, they're going to be excellent prompt engineers.
Yeah, and this does apply to all areas of generative AI, like definitely to creating human readable text in different languages, to code, to images, to video. Last night I was playing with music generators. Applies there as well. Like again, you write text and you ask it to create music that you like. Like slow tempo, heavy metal, 3 guitars, slow bass with a lot of reverb, and it makes a song for you. there's no singing, but otherwise it is there. And then you can we add some harmonica in the background, and it adds it. And and can we add Les Paul guitar with this kind of amp connected to it? And that's prompt engineering, just like in any other area.
It is, and the beauty of it is that you can ask a large language model to write a good prompt for you that you can then use for making images.
But it's also a business. I found a website where you could buy prompts for different AI. So there are these AI whisperers who are selling their services online.
Yeah.
All right. So now that we're trying to sort of not even catch up, but just like keep ourselves afloat on these the technological changes that need to happen, is there a risk that we're going to sort of miss out on the ethical and legal considerations, for example, when we're developing these tools to tackle this new world that we're facing?
Yep. That's probably one of the fights we are still facing. Stable Diffusion has been sued by image libraries. Comedians in USA have sued OpenAI for using jokes they've written. There's a lot of fighting to be left in the courtrooms about the legality of all of this and the copyright and content generated. What kind of protection should it have after it's been generated by these prompt engineers? And we don't have answers to all of that yet, but these are very powerful new technologies, and they will change the world one way or another. And the worst response to these new technologies is refusing to use them. And we've seen these, like, for example, Italy for quite a while was without access to GPT because of the fight with OpenAI about copyright of the content used to teach these systems. And like withdrawing the right of your citizens to use these powerful new technologies, that's definitely the wrong answer.
There has been a lot of discussion, and I guess it was OpenAI who openly said that we know that these models are not perfect, but we are also using the user input to train them to be better. So I guess we're kind of trying out different things and see where it goes, and then fix it in the mix.
And that's also one of the reasons these frontier companies are saying that they're bringing out these models to start the discussion with the regulators, with the people passing the laws, because clearly something needs to be done in this space. And that's pretty rare for an industry to go to the government to say that, hey, this is powerful, you should regulate us.
Yeah. No, on that topic, like it can be very scary. All this information that's available for us about us, and it's being used to train these AI models. Do we need to sort of look at like who's training models to do what, and do we need to regulate that? Can we regulate it? Like, are there legal, ethical concerns in that area?
Yeah, there are. And again, the fact that some of these models are open, which means anybody can do what the hell they want with them. And of course, you might make things illegal, but then again, criminals break the laws anyway. So making something illegal is not going to make a problem go away. We will be able to build rules and regulations affecting the way these frontier, the largest companies, models, and their models work in this space. But there will definitely be lasting problems by people who couldn't care less about laws and regulations.
That being said, the frontier companies, meaning the companies who are now kind of the best companies in the world doing this, they have identified all these areas. And there are, like, maybe you should briefly talk about system cards.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is very well understood problem for companies like Cohere or Anthropic or OpenAI. They have tons of people working in this space and people who are trying to break the security of the model in order to build it better. The system card is the specification for the largest large language models, which like show how you can use these technologies and how you should not use these technologies. What's the concrete specification for the API, how the token models have been built, and how they've been tested. And they have hundreds of people working in internal red teams, like trying to break the security of these models or try to make them misbehave or to give answers to questions they shouldn't be giving answers to. And that is, it's comforting to see that these companies are, at least the most important companies in the space, are taking this responsibility that they should be taking.
How well do you think we as an industry understand the sort of data that we have and the collection that's taking place? Like in the European Union, there are the GDP regulations on sort of how to store data, what to do with it. Do we think that using the tendency to use any data you have to train AI models, do we think that's going to have legal repercussions in that space?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of discussions about this. But if you look at the bigger picture, we have the knowledge, we have the know-how, we have the technology to build systems to make humanity better. We have the capability to build assistants and teachers that could make humans behave and reach things they couldn't reach any other way. And to do that, we have to be able to train these systems with the human knowledge. Some of that knowledge is copyrighted or protected somehow, but I'm sure we will be able to find a way to use this combined human knowledge to teach these systems, which would enable us to solve problems we couldn't solve any other way.
Right. Okay. Now, again, we don't have time to go through all of the questions that we've been getting. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for tuning in to listen to us. But I do want to ask this one final question that came from the audience and seemed very, very important to me. How do the people watching this webinar right now, how do they know that there are human beings on stage discussing this and everything is not deep faked?
Well, there's no way to know with the current technology. These could have all been faked. Our voices, our video. Well, I think the technology today would be good enough to have an end result like this, especially if it would have been pre-rendered. But since the question came in and we answered in fairly real time, with current technology, probably the quality wouldn't be this good, this fast.
It's easy to tell that, like, if the answers were even half good, must be AIs.
There we go.
There you go. Okay, thank you very much for tuning in and watching this webinar today, and join us next time as well. Thanks.